COP29 Conference 2024, Developing Financing Solutions for Sustainability. These insights on COP29 are brought to you by Nedbank.
COP29, which recently wrapped up in Baku, Azerbaijan, saw significant progress in climate finance and adaptation efforts in the final hours of the conference. Many commentators were surprised by the 11th hour agreements the parties concluded. Apart from significant climate finance funding for developing countries, countries also committed to mobilizing more than $1 trillion in total climate finance by 2035. Joining me now to discuss more on this is Bronwyn Price, Executive of Strategy and Sustainability at Nedbank CIB. Bronwyn, thank you very much for joining us again.
Thanks so much for having me, Gary.
Well, it's been encouraging to see climate finance for developing nations increase almost triple-fold. What were the key outcomes, you think, of COP29 in relation to climate finance, particularly for developing nations like South Africa?
I think the key one is that this ultimately was a finance COP. And just actually getting a deal. And I think at some stages in this COP, it looked like that wasn't going to happen. And we knew going into the COP that it would be a difficult outcome to achieve, given just where we are and where we find ourselves in the world at the moment, in terms of debt levels, GDP growth, changing geopolitics. So I think actually just having a deal come out of this and something that we can build on going forward is an incredible success from this COP. Albeit that the funding is not where we need it to be in terms of the amounts. I think if you look at the $300 billion, when it's inflation adjusted relative to the $100 billion that we had in 2009, similar amounts actually. But I think the aspiration to get to the 1.3 trillion by 2035, I think that's a good foundation that we're putting in place and looking at how we want to grow this from a country perspective.
How do you think the outcomes of COP29 will impact South Africa's ability to mobilize domestic and international climate finance?
So I think in the short term, I don't think we'll see any substantial change to South Africa's ability to mobilize financing. I think the deal in itself, as it's come through at the moment, looks similar to what we've had in the past. We're going to see multilateral and bilateral negotiations in the same way that we did with the JET. I think through the longer term, one of the things that we're seeing people talk around is really around shifting the multilateral finance architecture. It was a priority at the G20 this year. And I think as South Africa takes up that leadership position, that's something we really need to look at is how do we build out more innovative financing solutions for the developing South that take into account development and also sustainable finance, climate finance, nature-related solutions that we really need in order to drive the transition to a low-carbon economy.
Bronwyn,
so I think that's something that we really would like to see more of this year.
Bronwyn, what are the most promising opportunities for South Africa to attract climate finance into our economy in the coming years, and what challenges might hinder these efforts, you think?
I think the opportunities really are the known opportunities, and we've seen those coming through in the Presidential Climate Commission. It's really around the energy transition being the huge opportunity that we see at the moment from a South African perspective. Opportunities also around transportation and the transportation infrastructure. I think if you look at mass mobility, mass people movement, taking into account the geospatial inequalities that we have in our country, and then the shift to EVs, another substantial opportunity set there. Hydrogen, the third big opportunity. More longer term, a little bit more uncertainty around some of those opportunities. But again, I think something that we will see coming more in the future as we go forward. From a challenges perspective, I think really it's around having clear policy goals as a country, knowing where we want to go to, what are the policies that we're following. So policy certainty, really. And we see that as a call worldwide, actually, that people are looking for policy certainty. When are the dates of transition? When are we looking to have clarity on when we will move away from ICE vehicles, for example? We've seen that in Europe, giving a lot of certainty to those sectors We don't have clarity from a South African perspective, although I understand it is something that DTI is looking at the moment in their EV strategy. So hopefully we will have more of that certainty coming in the future. I think the other thing we need institutional capacity around our departments, and how do we build out future technologies, future strategies, how are we evolving around that? And then to create that pipeline of bankable deals. The banks are ready to finance them. We need more of that pipeline of deals coming through.
From a bank like Nedbank's perspective, how can South Africa effectively leverage public-private partnerships to accelerate climate action and attract greater investment?
So I think if you look at South Africa and the success that we've had in the public-private partnership, so one of the examples of this is the REAP program that we've had over the last 10, 15 years now. And I mean, I think that's been immensely successful in the numerous rounds that it's had and continues to be. And I think that program really lays out a clear foundation of the goals that they were looking to achieve. It was a framework in which all of the participants knew what they were operating, where they were operating, and that policy certainty, those guidelines, gave everybody clarity on the roles that they could play in the opportunity set that arose. And we've seen that in the renewable energy and in the battery rounds that have come more recently around that. But I think that sort of framework, and if we can have more of that, looking at different sectors that need to transition, and the different opportunity sets that exist, I think that will give the impetus for public and private funding to flow and enable the transition from a country perspective.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Fantastic outcomes and some positivity to look forward to as far as COP29 is concerned. Bronwyn Price, Executive for Strategy and Sustainability at Nedbank CIB. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Gary.
Well, that concludes our discussions around COP29. We look forward to bringing you more from COP30 in Brazil in 2025.
COP29 Conference 2024, Developing Financing Solutions for Sustainability. These insights on COP29 are brought to you by Nedbank.